In Memphis, Tennessee, teenager Belinda Henry grows up in a loving family. She's happy and takes every opportunity to show it.
My mom was beautiful inside and out. She was very giving and caring. I remember her voice would be like so light and airy when she would sing.
Around the tender age of 21, Belinda marries her high school sweetheart. Early on, life is wonderful. But young love is hard to maintain. And 10 years in, things are less than perfect, and their turbulent relationship starts to affect their 2 children.
My mom and my dad were arguing about something. I can't remember what they were arguing about, but I know I was sitting in my room, door closed, listening.
They try to make it work, but it just isn't meant to be. And after another year, Belinda and her husband call it quits.
When couples get together when they're very young, too often what happens is, instead of growing together, these youngsters tend to just grow apart because they haven't really formed a sense of self.
But Belinda refuses to give up on love. A few years later, she meets a new man and once again ties the knot. She moves to Atlanta with her 2 kids and new hubby, but her second marriage is an even bigger disaster.
He did have a very bad attitude, and I think they probably clashed a lot because of that attitude.
And if that's not bad enough, Belinda suspects her husband is fooling around behind her back.
That was just like heartbreaking to her.
I just found a number in your jacket. Whose number is this?
To find out that she was being cheated on.
Her second marriage is over before she knows it, and it sends her into a downward spiral.
After that, that's probably when I realized that's when she was starting to get depressed, because that's when she would like just stay in her room all day, and she just said she was just so sad and just depressed and tired.
After the breakup of her second relationship, Belinda was really distraught. And it really would have served her well emotionally, psychologically, if she had taken the time to heal by herself, without a man.
Now 38, she decides to make a fresh start 20 miles away in Marietta, Georgia.
So I think change scenery was well needed after what had happened with her second husband.
And then one afternoon, it's her kids that convince Belinda to give love another chance.
We were in her room watching TV, and the chat line commercial came across the TV screen, and my brother was like,
Mom, you should call that number.
And we thought it was funny at the time, and that's how she met the next guy that she started dating.
The service hooks her up with 42-year-old Keith Henry, a former Marine and a current fashion model.
He did not look like a model. He looked like a regular, average, everyday man.
But Belinda immediately falls under his spell.
When Belinda got together with Keith, this was somewhat, for her, a healing kind of situation. She felt she wouldn't be abandoned.
The charmer also feels at ease enough to reveal his dark secrets.
He was a convicted felon. He had a prior conviction for armed robbery. He did 5 years in the Georgia State Penitentiary.
I was aware that he had a criminal past, that he had a long rap sheet, and me and my brother were looking like, what? And I guess it was like his way of intimidating us and letting us know, don't mess with me, because this is what I've done to people.
Keith's been a free man for the past 2 years, and Belinda is not slowed down one bit by his shady past. In fact, she falls into the same trap as her first 2 marriages. And after only about 3 months, Keith proposes, and she says,
Yes.
That was a big shock that she had went and married him. I didn't even know they were even thinking about marriage.
But it's not long before the romance is replaced with chaos.
Belinda had 2 children that she was trying to take care of. And now that she was married,
Disrespectful kid.
now he's an additional burden on her as well.
The bills keep piling up.
Yes, I paid the bill.
No one is knocking down Keith's door with modeling jobs.
Keith was an ex-convict and not able to get work. Really emasculated him, and that was a recipe for disaster.
Belinda!
As panic sets in, he decides to turn back to doing what comes naturally,
I got a plan.
stealing. Last time, his bank robberies landed him behind bars. But now, Keith has a surefire remedy to cure their financial woes and keep him out of prison.
You have to trust me.
Keith felt that a check cashing store would be a good target. Check cashing stores commonly bring in a lot of cash, and they are not as secure as banks.
Look, I mean, I got experience at this.
And he wants his woman by his side.
Yes.
Belinda did not have a prior criminal history. She came from a good family, and it becomes a very bad and very negative influence on her.
Trust me, it will work.
He was able to manipulate her to do anything to help him.
Okay.
With Belinda on board with the scheme to rob a check cashing store, the illicit lovers get to work.
His plan was to go to the manager's home very early in the morning and force the managers to provide him the codes and the means to enter the safe.
Then they'll hit the store before it opens and clean the place out. After a few days casing a local shop, they identify the perfect victim, 48-year-old Sheila Dates.
Sheila was the manager of a check cashing store in Marietta. She lived in Jonesboro in a small apartment complex with her daughter.
With no man or dog to cause problems, she looks like an easy target. Bright and early the next day, they make their move. It's a morning Sheila will never forget.
I was actually abed and asleep, and my daughter Regina gets up. She came upstairs and told me that there were two FBI agents at the door that wanted to talk to me.
The couple had posed as FBI agents and bought cheap badges at a gun show.
I came downstairs and saw them with their badges, and I let them in.
The dangerous couple doesn't bother with pleasantries. As soon as the door shuts behind them, they pull their guns.
We were told to sit down on the couch, and if we cooperated, we would get out of this alive. If not, we both would go out in body bags.
They tie the women up and demand Sheila explain how to steal the cash at her work without alerting police.
I felt like there was nothing that I could do. I had to tell them exactly how to get into the store.
There's 3 doors you have to go through.
Using the codes for the alarm and for the safe.
0787.
But the process is more complicated than they could have ever imagined.
And more than 10 minutes before the store opens.
She tried to explain to Keith and Belinda Henry what they needed to do to get in the store, but they were not able to get it down just right. And that's when the plan changed.
Keith decides to change tactics.
Sheila would have to accompany Belinda to the store. He was going to stay at the apartment with her daughter, and that if anything went wrong, he would kill her.
At that point, I was in complete cooperation mode to make sure that nothing happened to my daughter.
Sheila turns to look at Regina, unsure if she will ever see her again.
That last moment was, I love you, Mommy. It was, I love you, baby girl. We couldn't say it, but we was seeing it in each other's eyes.
Belinda forces Sheila into Regina's car, and the two begin the drive to the check cashing store 42 miles away in Marietta.
After we got in the car, she pulled the gun to let me know that she meant business and not to try anything. I knew that she was in control, and I had to do what she told me to do, or else I was going to die.
Belinda's life was spiraling out of control, and her only anchor to reality is the hold that she has on Sheila.
30 minutes later, the women arrive at the store, and it's go time. They have to work quickly before the other employees arrive for their shift or the store opens and customers start to show up.
She was walking behind me, still with the gun pointed at me. We had to go through 3 doors to get to the safe.
Sheila conveniently leaves out a key detail in the store's security. A sensor keeps track of how many people are near the safe.
The system was set up so that the safe would not open if 2 people were present. What Sheila was hoping is that once they approached the safe together, this would alert the outside alarm source that something was amiss.
Come on, open it.
Sheila punches in the code. But just as she planned, the safe doesn't open. Belinda starts to get anxious.
She saw that the door was not open and I could not get into the safe.
I need to call the security company.
I convinced her that if I didn't call them to unlock the safe, she wouldn't be able to get the money.
If you want to get in here, I need to call them.
Reluctantly, she allows her captive to call the security company, but warns her to keep it cool.
No tricks. No tricks.
I had already been warned not to talk in code, so I knew not to try to alert the security people.
Yes, that is the code I put in.
I called the security person, and the safe still didn't open.
It's still not working.
The sensors were picking up the presence of 2 people at the safe.
Yes,
An anxious Sheila is allowed to call the security company a second time. Now she is confident that they will follow protocol and know something is wrong. But instead, she gets the shock of her life.
I was hoping that they would ask me, is everything okay? And I could just say no. But they never did. They just opened it.
Belinda finally gets her hands on the cash.
She reached in, she put all of the bills in a bag, which totaled approximately $16,000.
Keith is back at Sheila's house holding her 21-year-old daughter, Regina, hostage.
It was quite clear that Sheila and her daughter Regina were pawns to this game that Keith and Belinda had put together.
Keith told Sheila, if you don't fully cooperate and we don't get this money, I'm going to kill Regina.
Please don't do it.
The last thing she said to me was, Mommy, do what they tell you to do.
But Keith has other plans.
He never intended to allow Regina to live.
Keith coldly ignores the frightened young woman's whimpers as she fears for her life.
He tied a cord around her neck and choked and asphyxiated her.
Regina was only 21 years old. And what's so horrific was that Keith had all along intended to murder Regina, to murder Sheila, because he didn't want to leave behind any witnesses. He didn't want to go back to jail.
After Keith is certain that Regina is dead, he calmly heads out to meet up with his wife. Back at the check cashing store, Belinda is now faced with holding up her end of the deal.
After Belinda got all of the money, I was thinking she was just gonna tie me up and just leave me in the store and go.
But her man, Keith, gave her explicit instructions.
He had told her that she had to kill me.
Why are you doing this? You have the money.
His intention was to eliminate witnesses.
I couldn't even tell you a reason why my mom would even think to go along with something like that. Had it not been for him, I honestly believe that she would never done anything like that.
Belinda knew that she had risked her own clean record, but she wanted to do anything she could for Keith, even if it meant losing any semblance of civility. And she knew that this wasn't the person she really wanted to be.
But there's no turning back for Belinda. Not wanting to draw attention with gunfire, she grabs a much quieter weapon. She even has some final words for Sheila.
She apologized and said, I'm sorry, but still she strangled me anyway.
But Sheila isn't about to give up.
As she's pulling the cord around my neck tighter and tighter, I'm fighting harder and harder. The more I struggled, the more she pulled. There was blood all around my nose, and I fought for dear life for me and for my daughter until I passed out. Everything went black after that.
Once Sheila is out, Belinda grabs the bag of cash and runs for the door. She flees and dumps Sheila's car behind a strip mall and meets up with Keith, who is waiting for her, just as they planned. He asks if she killed the witness like he instructed, but all Belinda can say is, I don't know. Back at the check cashing store, Sheila begins to stir.
My eyes can hardly see, but I'm alive. I dragged myself to the phone to call 911 for help.
They send help right away, but Sheila only has one thing on her mind.
I think they killed my daughter. That's all I could say.
Investigators rush to her home and find Regina's lifeless body. Sheila is rushed to the hospital and she begs to know what happened to her daughter.
No one would give me an answer. Finally, the detective said, I know you've gone through an ordeal, but the man that stayed at the house killed your daughter.
Oh, not my baby. Oh, no, my baby.
I didn't want to believe it, but in my heart, I think I knew it was true, but it still was unreal.
Sheila gathers herself and gives the officers in minute detail anything she can remember about her captors.
That was my determination and motivation to make sure that they knew everything about these people so that they could catch them. I sat down with the sketch artist. I gave them a perfect description of the both of them.
The police now know what the perps look like, and they set out to find them. Meanwhile, Keith and Belinda are in the wind, 30 miles away.
They were staying at a local hotel, and if they watched the news, they would have heard that Sheila survived.
With a witness that could put them behind bars, Keith knows there's no turning back. He convinces Belinda to go on a crime spree. If they go down, they will go down in style.
In many ways, Belinda was being held captive by Keith. One thing she knew for sure was that she could not go back to the life that she once had.
Leaving her 2 kids behind, Keith and Belinda hightail it to Nashville and start to blow through the $16,000 in stolen cash. Keith is finally able to lavish his woman in the finer things in life.
They actually went shopping, and they bought jewelry and clothing, and they went out and ate.
But their once deep pockets are starting to run low. With nothing to lose and everything to gain, the deadly couple decide it's time to strike again.
Following the homicide and the robbery here in Georgia, they then rob a bank.
Belinda waits in the car, while Keith walks in, shows the teller a gun, and demands money.
Belinda knew what it was like to finally have that kind of money. So she was not in touch with reality, the reality of civility, the reality of humanity.
This time, Keith and Belinda get away with a cool $17,000 and splurge on a used Mercedes. The pair then make their way to Belinda's old stomping grounds in Memphis. But what the lovers don't know is that back in Georgia, investigators are hot on their trail. Thanks to Sheila's detailed descriptions, they have identified both Keith and Belinda Henry.
We were able to gather information on Keith, and that led us to their home in Marietta.
From there, police use cell phone towers to triangulate the couple's location.
Belinda was in communication with her friend in Chicago. These series of phone calls that Belinda made enabled the FBI to track them as they moved from Tennessee to New Jersey.
The next day, agents close in on them.
The FBI simply made a phone call into the room. Belinda answered the phone.
Hello.
And she was told, this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're out here. We have the location surrounded. We want you to come out.
Visibly shaken, Belinda shares the news with Keith.
Who was that?
FBI.
What?
They're here. It's over.
They here?
FBI, come out!
Keith knows that their time has just run out. He opens the door and raises his hands in the air. And then,
Keith slammed the door shut, and he went to check on Belinda.
horrified, he sees his wife lying in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor. 1 shot to the head. Belinda has taken her own life.
She had been on this deadly roller coaster ride with Keith, and she couldn't come to terms with what she had done. And so, in her mind, the only way out was killing herself.
FBI, come out now!
The FBI heard this gunshot, and of course they didn't know what had transpired inside the room, so they directed Keith to come out.
Hands in the air, Keith is arrested without incident. FBI and local authorities rush in, but there is nothing they can do for Belinda. They take her distraught husband in for questioning, and he takes the entire blame for everything.
He confessed to the crime in its entirety. He confessed to his preparation for the crime. He confessed to the murder of Regina, and that he manipulated her.
My mom never would have done anything like that unless it was something just suggested by him. My mom had no criminal background, no tickets or anything. He preyed upon her and played my mom like a fiddle.
It appears that Keith showed some remorse. He most likely felt responsible for that, and perhaps felt that by confessing, this was the final gift that he could give her.
A few days later, Keith is extradited back to Georgia. He's charged with the murder of Regina Dates, impersonating an officer, and possession of a firearm as a convicted felon. But Keith has one startling request.
He said, tell the district attorney, I want the death penalty. I've never had that happen, ever, in any murder case I've ever investigated.
The state grants his wish. Keith Henry is found guilty on all charges and is sentenced to death. Belinda Henry lost her life in the hopes of building a better one, all in the name of love. A few states away in Houston, Texas, 16-year-old Ashley Irvin's once promising future comes to a screeching halt when she shifts her focus from books to a boy. Childhood starts out rocky for Ashley in Houston's inner city. Looking for a better life, her mother packs up the family.
Ashley was raised in a single-family home. Her father was not too much in her life.
She lived in the projects for a little while, and then her mom moved her to a neighborhood in North Houston.
Basically, I was the mother and the father.
And she refuses to let any disadvantage slow her down.
Ashley was a very ambitious young lady. She knew what she wanted in life, and she did everything she needed to do to achieve those goals.
She told me what she was going to be before she knew what it was. She told me, Mom, I'll be a baby doctor. I said, a baby doctor? All right.
While many little girls forget their youthful dreams, Ashley holds on to hers. At Forest Brook High School, she is handpicked for their Accelerated Health Science Technology program.
Her path was clear. She volunteered for cancer walks. She volunteered with blood drives. She was a peer counselor. She was an honor roll student. She was very, very busy.
The determined high schooler packs her schedule even tighter when she gets her first job at a popular fast food restaurant. Pretty soon, her proud mother presents her with yet another first.
I popped up for school on her birthday, and I gave her some keys. I said, well, you know this car is for school and work on it. She said, that's all I need, Mom, because I'm going to college next year.
And the streak of firsts continues when her eye catches a handsome young man, 16-year-old Keithron Fields, Ashley's first love.
She met Keithron at a park one day. And then school started the following fall, and he went to school with her.
And like his new girlfriend, Keithron's family has recently relocated from the inner city. Things between the teenagers move fast.
They got closer in school, and they actually started saying that they were a couple at sophomore year.
But even with a new girlfriend at a new high school, Keithron struggles to leave his old friends behind.
Keithron and Ashley were very different. Keithron's crew was made up of kids who no one would be surprised, frankly, if they got into trouble.
This appears to have been a case of the good girl meets the bad boy. And even though in the movies we see that the opposites attract and the relationship works out, the reality is these sorts of situations rarely work out.
If you see Ashley, 2 seconds later, here comes Keithron. And you saw Keithron, 2 seconds later, here come Ashley.
For their first 8 months together, the lovebirds go for long car rides, watch movies, or just hang out and chill. For a while, Ashley is the young man's whole world. But the honeymoon comes to a screeching halt when in rolls a third wheel from the old hood.
Keithron loves Ashley, but his heart is still with his crew.
You know I'll play, baby. Come on now.
Namely Dexter Johnson.
Dexter was the leader of the crew. He was a dominant type. He was volatile also. Ashley and Dexter actually knew each other as children.
But Dexter isn't the same kid she used to play hide and seek with. And she isn't crazy about sharing her new man with his old friend.
Ashley saw Dexter as perhaps an unfortunate part of the package.
Ashley put up with Dexter being around her and Keithron because she really needed to have that connection. Being so young and so now dependent on Keithron, she was willing to put up with any kind of arrangement.
Desperate to be with her man, Ashley, now 17, joins the boys one night as they cruise the streets.
Ashley has the car, so it's natural that they would want her to ride along.
The trio drives around for hours. Bored and exhausted, she finally agrees to let Dexter take the wheel.
She got in the back seat because she was tired and she fell asleep. She woke up when she heard the car door slam, and Keithron say that woman didn't have any money.
It's clear the boys have been up to no good. From the sound of it, they've been robbing people. As far as she can tell, so far they've come up empty.
After this apparent failed robbery attempt of a woman at a bus stop who said she had no money, no jewelry, Dexter was pretty frustrated. He told Ashley, just drive them back to Keith Ron's house. Ashley started the drive home. All of a sudden, the boys told her, pull over. They see a man at a car wash.
The apprehensive teen does as she's told.
Dexter and Keith Ron immediately jump out with their guns. Dexter was not about to go home empty-handed. He saw this man as an easy target. It was dark, he was alone, and a few minutes later, Ashley heard one gunshot.
The boys yell for Ashley to pick them up. They hop in, and the teenagers speed off.
Come on, let's go, let's go!
Dexter vents his frustrations, feeling punked by the man who claimed he had no cash.
Ashley was curious about what just happened, and Dexter said, I had to do it.
Shocked by his callous admission, she makes the drive back in stunned silence.
Ashley realizes how dangerous this combination of Dexter and Keith Ron is, in that maybe her life is in jeopardy if she says something. She knows she's the getaway driver, so there is no turning back.
Back at Keith Ron's house, they immediately turn on the TV.
Dexter was particularly interested in watching the news to see if there were any living witnesses left.
They learned from watching the news that the man was 61-year-old Brady Davis. He was a retired school teacher from Forest Brook, the same high school where Ashley and Keith Ron attended.
And it turns out that the guy who they shot died.
In the weeks that follow, Ashley and Keith Ron keep to themselves. When they finally reunite with Dexter, Ashley doesn't dare bring up the shooting.
What's up with your baby girl?
But before she knew it, she was back running the street with the guys.
Dexter told Keith Ron and Ashley that he was tired of petty crimes that didn't yield much money. He said he wanted to steal a car and then sell it. And he needed Keith Ron's help, and he needed Ashley's help.
I think she was put in a situation where if she walked away, they would come after her, or people she loved and cared about.
Without wasting any time, the two musketeers, with Ashley as the reluctant third, begin prowling the streets. It's not long before they spot the perfect ride.
They finally saw a couple sitting in a car in front of a house. The young woman was named Maria. They were parked in front of her boyfriend's house. His name was Huey.
Dexter saw this as an opportunity. Not only could he steal a car, he could also rob the couple of their money.
Dexter and Keith Ron got out of the car. They ran up to the couple's car and started banging on the windows, showing them their weapons and demanding that the couple get out of the car.
At first, Maria refuses, but she sees the danger in their eyes and timidly opens the door.
He forced her out of that car and dragged her out by her hair.
Keith Ron and Dexter ordered Maria and Huey into the back seat.
The boys tell Ashley to follow them. After a 30-minute drive, they all arrive at a dark, deserted area close to a park.
Once they got to that wooded area, Dexter and Keith Ron demanded that Maria and Huey get out of the back seat. They demanded their wallets. They demanded their ATM PIN numbers. The couple gave them everything they asked for.
But for Dexter, it's still not enough.
Dexter hit Huey in the head with his gun and told Huey to get on the ground and take off his shirt.
Start taking them clothes off.
They ordered Maria to get completely naked, and Dexter told Maria to get into the back seat of the car.
Get in the car.
She saw Dexter unbuckling his belt, and she knew what she was about to witness was a rape.
Get in the car.
She is both heartbroken and disgusted to see Keith Ron chiming in on the heinous act.
Keith Ron was actually taunting Huey, telling Huey to watch as his brother Dexter raped his girlfriend.
After Dexter raped Maria,
Get your girl.
Apparently, she wasn't even able to stand and walk. She was so devastated, so distraught.
Ashley perhaps didn't tell them to stop, didn't go to the police, because she knew if she said something, it could cost her her own life.
Dexter and Keith Ron still aren't finished.
Within moments, Ashley hears gunshots.
Dexter and Keith Ron walk back from the woods, and Huey and Maria aren't with them. Dexter tells Ashley that they have to get out of there.
Dexter and Keith Ron got in the stolen car, with Ashley following. The three of them all went to a gas station where Dexter used Maria's stolen ATM and put gas in both cars.
They head home, and Ashley is deeply burdened by yet another secret.
It was bad enough that Ashley was involved in that first murder, but now she's caught between a rock and a hard place. She really loves Keith Ron, but she also knows what she's doing is wrong. She is in limbo.
Over the next few days, the once promising high school junior's life comes crashing down.
Dexter was arrested on an unrelated drug and weapons charge.
While he's being questioned, the cops have an extraordinary stroke of luck.
Maria's dad called the police and reported her missing.
Maria's father informs police that there are several charges on her credit card. When they check the surveillance footage at a gas station, police see Dexter using her credit card. Investigators already have their prime suspect sitting in interrogation. When they press him, the young gangster quickly cracks.
Dexter admitted to raping Maria and walking them into the woods, but he denies shooting them.
I ain't killed nobody.
Dexter was very quick to turn on his friends.
You need to talk to Keith, Ron, and Ashley, not me.
He tried to pin all the crimes on Keith Ron. He tried anything to save his own skin.
A few hours later, detectives locate Ashley at work and bring her in for her side of the story.
When police questioned Ashley, she was terrified. This is a girl who had never been in trouble with the law.
At first, Ashley didn't want to answer too many questions because she didn't want to implicate Keith Ron.
But pretty soon, the frightened teenager starts to talk. She gives police every last detail of what went down. Later that night, Keith Ron also lays it out on the line, and their stories match.
Both Ashley and Keith Ron made it clear to the authorities that it was Dexter who had committed the murders.
All three teenagers are convicted of capital murder. Dexter Johnson receives the death penalty.
Ashley and Keith Ron both received life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Ashley may have only acted as the getaway driver, but she will pay heavily for her involvement.
I asked my daughter why. What happened? Why you didn't tell me something? I could have helped you. I found out later why she would never tell me what happened, because she was fearing for my life.